Good morning, everyone. My name is Arpan Banerjee, and I'm a doctoral fellow at the Department of East Asian Studies, University of Delhi, and academic counselor here at IGNOU. And I welcome you all to today's learning session. So, I've been teaching you the paper, the name of which is Administrative System in BRICS. And the code of this paper is BPAE-143. So let us begin today's class. So far, we have discussed as part of this paper, that is Administrative System in BRICS, we have discussed the first block, which consisted of constitutional framework and structure of government in BRICS countries. As part of that, we have discussed the first unit, which was pertaining to the constitutional framework in the BRICS countries. The second unit, it was pertaining to the legislature, the legislative framework in the BRICS countries, and the third and the fourth units of this first block were pertaining to the executive and judicial frameworks, respectively, in the BRICS countries. So, moving on, in this paper, we have also discussed the second block, which was pertaining to the bureaucracy and control mechanism over administration in the BRICS countries. And as part of that, we have discussed the fifth unit, which was pertaining to the role of bureaucracy in policy making, implementation, and analysis. And we have also discussed the control mechanism over administration as part of the second block. As part of the third block, we have discussed, which was pertaining to the personnel management. We have discussed the recruitment and promotion of personnel and the training of civil servants in the BRICS countries. So, as part of the fourth block, in the previous class, we had, which was pertaining to the fourth block, is pertaining to planning, budgeting, and audit system in the BRICS countries. We had discussed the ninth unit of the fourth block in the last class, which is planning process in the BRICS countries. And in today's class, we shall be discussing the budgeting and audit system, which is part of the 10th unit. That is what we shall be discussing in today's class. So let us begin budgeting and audit system, which is the 10th unit. So we all know that budgeting is one of the principal tools of financial management of a country. In fact, the economy of a country is greatly influenced by the budgeting actions of the government. That we already know. And government budgeting is one of the major processes by which the use of public resources is planned and controlled. And it is through the budget only that the programs and the policies of the governments, they are brought increasingly to the service of the citizens. And this process, it enhances the moral and material status of the citizens. Now, if we talk about the audit system, whereas the budget, it acts as a tool of financial control. Budget, it acts as a tool of financial control at various stages. What are those stages? Before expenditure, after expenditure, and in between. If we talk about the audit, in contrast to the budget, the audit, it comes into picture at the time of making expenditure and after that. So audit is an integral part of any financial administration and an effective mode of control of public finance is audit. So audit, it is a tool for assessing the internal operations of administration. So it is a tool for assessing the internal operations of the administration. and it is concerned with independent examination of the accounts or verification of the statements of financial position and all the financial transactions. So there are 4 stages of audit. The first stage is called the appropriation audit. Appropriation audit, it involves looking into the conformity to purpose and statutory limits. The second stage, it is called the regulatory audit. It involves ensuring that the rules and regulations are fully adhered to. The third stage of an audit is propriety audit. This is also called higher audit, and it looks beyond the formality of the expenditure, and it analyzes the wisdom, faithfulness, and economy of the expenditure. And the final stage is the efficiency audit, and it is beyond the other forms of scrutiny to an examination of the efficiency of the agency or the authority of which the audit is being done. Now let us move on to the budgeting and audit systems that prevail in the BRICS countries. So we shall start with Brazil. So if we discuss the budgeting system in Brazil, it has a high degree of rigidity in its budgeting system. The Ministry of Finance is separate from the Ministry of Planning in Brazil, and budget and management. So in Brazil, the Ministry of Finance is separate from the Ministry of Planning, but the budgeting is a separate function from planning. So it is largely a top-down operation in Brazil, and the Brazilian president also plays a very important role in this budgeting operation. So broadly speaking, the budgeting process in Brazil, it can be divided into 3 phases. The first phase is concerned with the preparation of estimates and the draft budget. The second phase in the budgeting process in Brazil is pertaining to the presentation of the budget in the legislature of Brazil for its enactment. And the final phase, it includes the final changes and endorsement by the president of Brazil. So the first phase of the budgeting process, it starts much earlier than April, when it is to be presented to the Brazilian Congress as a draft budget guidance law. So the Brazilian Congress has to pass the budget by the end of June, and in the final phase, the presidential budget implementation directions are issued, which may carry many changes in the budget as well, which are enacted by the Congress. Now, if we talk about the audit system in Brazil, for the purpose of external audit, the Federal Court of Accounts, or the TCU, is the apex body, and it is an apex body, and it acts as an auxiliary to the National Congress or the legislature of Brazil. And this national Congress, it has the powers to control and oversight over federal public sector entities and federal public fund. So it is paying attention to accountability and decision-making process, in particular in relation to audit of the consolidated year-end government report, known as Accounts of the President of the Republic of Brazil. So this TCU, or Federal Court of Accounts, it strives to improve the ways in which it supports government accountability and decision-making. So now let us discuss the budgeting and audit system in Russia. If we talk about the budgeting in Russia, Russia is a federal state, and there is a 3-layered government structure in Russia. The first layer is the federal layer, the second is the regional, and the third is the local. So at the federal level, along with the federal budget, the budget of extra budgetary funds is also presented to the Parliament of Russia, or the State Duma. So these funds, these extra budgetary funds, they include the state pension fund, the social insurance fund, and the federal mandatory health insurance fund. And at the regional level, there are certain territorial funds as well. So, in light of administrative reforms in Russia on the pattern of new public management, various institutional and budgetary reforms took place in 2007. So, one such reform was introduction of 3-year budgets. Other reforms they included the new fiscal rules and extra budgetary activities. So the 3-year budgets they were started from the year 2008. So the funds are authorized for the next budget year and a 2-year planning period. Mainly it is on line items pattern, and appropriations remain unchanged for the current year but are inflated by the use of various indexes which are fixed by the Ministry of Finance. So this arrangement is quite similar to multi-year budget estimations as used in many countries, but in Russia it is codified for 3 years budget. If we talk about the audit system that is prevalent in Russia, in the Russian system of governance, audit is now regarded as a good indicator. It was not so earlier. In the modern form, if we see, audit was introduced during the second half of the 1980s, and towards the end of 1993, first rules regarding audit activity in the form of provincial rules of audit activity were issued, and on the basis of which 4 types of audit were introduced in Russia. The first was the general audit, the second is the book audit, the third was the insurance audit, and the fourth was the audit of commodity and stock exchange. So in the year 2008, self-regulatory organizations of auditors were established, of which the following five, they continue to exist today. The first is the Audit Chamber of Russia. The second is the Institute of Professional Auditors. The third is the Moscow Audit Chamber. The fourth is the Russian Collegium of Auditors, and finally there is the Auditor Association in Russia. Now moving on to the next BRICS country, that is our country India. If we now we shall be discussing the budgeting and audit system in India. So if we talk about the budgeting in India, we have to first discuss the legislative or parliamentary control over taxation, which is a very important aspect. So Article 265 of the Constitution of India, it clearly states that no tax shall be levied or collected except by authority of law. Now, if we talk about legislative or parliamentary control over expenditure, this indicates that not even a single penny can be spent except with the sanction of the legislature. So if we talk about Article 266 of our Constitution, it lays down that all revenues received and all loans raised and all monies received in the form of repayment of loans by the union or state, they shall be from one consolidated fund to be known as the Consolidated Fund of India or the Consolidated Fund of the state, as the case may be. Now let us discuss the financial initiative of the executive government. So the initiative for taxation or expenditure, it lies with the executive, and the parliament, it cannot act in these matters suo moto. So Article 117 and 207 of the Indian Constitution, they lay down that no tax bill imposing a tax can be introduced in the legislature except on the recommendations of the president or the governor, as the case may be. So now let us discuss the process of budget preparation in India, which can be divided into the following stages. The first stage is pertaining to the preparation of preliminary estimates by the disbursing officers. The second stage is concerned with scrutiny of the estimates by the Department of Controlling Officers. The third stage is related to scrutiny by the Accountant General and Administrative Department. The fourth stage involves scrutiny review consolidation by the Finance Ministry, and The fifth stage, it involves consideration of the consolidated estimates by the cabinet. Now, if we shall be discussing the audit system in India, so the power of accounting and auditing is vested in the Indian Audit Accounts Department, and this Indian Audit Accounts Department is divided into five classes. It has been divided into five classes of officers. We shall be discussing what are those five classes. The first class is the Civil Accounts and Audit Offices. The second class it includes the Post and Telegraph Accounts and Audit Offices. The third class, it includes the Railway Audit Offices. The fourth is pertaining to the Defense Service Audit Offices, and the fifth one is the Commercial Audit Offices. So the Office of Auditor General, it made its appearance way back in 1857. And after that, under certain reforms from time to time, the institution of Comptroller and Auditor General, that is CAG, it assumed independent authority as well as statutory recognition. And under the Constitution of India, Article 148 to Article 151, they deal with the position and functions of the CAG. So Girish Chandra Murmu is right now the CAG of India. In fact, the object of these provisions under the Constitution is to secure independence of the CAG from the control of the executive, so that the CAG can perform his duties and functions without fear or favor. And the Constitution empowers the President to make appointment of the CAG. However, the CAG can be removed from office in the manner and on the like grounds as a judge of the Supreme Court. So in India, the audit is mostly limited to the expenditure side only. However, its concern with the receipt is quite limited. So audit is conducted on behalf of the executive, and audit reports are submitted to the executive. So the executive in turn submits these reports to the parliament. It's primarily a legality audit, and ordinarily it does not go into the question of merits of expenditure. So there is also the combination of accounting and auditing functions as well. And audit and accounts have been organized fewer than one and same service called the Indian Account Service. Now let us discuss the budgeting and audit system in China. So we shall be starting with the budget reforms in China. So due to wide range economic problems in China, a number of measures were initiated during the 1990s. And the Chinese government, it tried the bold step of liberalization. So the gradual reduction of government control, it worked well in China, especially in the productive sector, but it yielded less result in other areas. The budget, it was weak, with the revenue mechanism of the planned economy undermining the market forces. And it was observed by a number of experts that the system of budget was faulty, with poor drafting and unrealistic estimations. So the famous scholar Chen, he described the budgeting process in China as chaotic, characterized by fragmented control under numerous bodies and departments, and lacking transparency and accountability over management of resources. So within the Ministry of Finance, numerous departments or bureaus were involved in budgeting, which each one in charge of one or more expenditure items, which were divided and allocated to many ministries or departments. So the National Audit Office of the People's Republic of China, called the CNAO, it is the supreme audit institution of China, and it works directly under the guidance and leadership of the Chinese premier, that is Xi Jinping. So this CNAO, it covers wide-ranging areas as far as the audit and financial control is concerned. The first area is pertaining to the implementation of the central budget and other revenues and expenditures of public finance. The second area is pertaining to revenues and expenditures of the central departments, non-profit undertakings and their subordinate units. The third area is pertaining to budget implementation and final accounts of the provincial people's government. And the fourth area is pertaining to revenues and expenditures of the central bank, assets, liabilities, profits, and losses of the central institutions. Now, let us discuss the budgeting and audit system in South Africa. So, if we just talk about the budgeting in South Africa, there was a time where there was no budgeting system in South Africa. And that was during the apartheid era. So, in fact, the budgetary system in South Africa during that era, it was quite secretive. And as a matter of fact, budgeting was primarily confined to executive only, and the parliament was merely playing the role of a rubber stamp. Therefore, the elements of transparency and accountability, they were missing in the public finance management system during the apartheid era. However, with the shift to democracy in 1994, the new system that was established with the establishment of the Republic of South Africa in 1994 and Nelson Mandela being freed from jail and being elected as the first president of the Republic of South Africa, as his party African National Congress, it secured a thumping majority in the 1994 elections. So this new system, this new democratic system that emerged in South Africa, it started focusing on good governance, and it particularly emphasized on the elements of accountability and transparency post 1994. So in the year 1998 and 1999, the medium term expenditure framework, or MTEF, was introduced in order to encourage participatory approach in the budgeting process, as well as transparency, accountability, and policy budget coordination. So this MTEF, medium term expenditure framework, is a 3-year rolling strategy which sets up spending plans for the national and provincial government departments. So if we talk about the audit system in South Africa, like the new budgeting system, South Africa also adopted a pragmatic audit system as well. The Supreme Audit Institution of South Africa is called the Auditor General of South Africa, or AGSA. And although the Office of Auditor General is working since its establishment, the scope of its working and nature of its powers have been considerably expanded under the Constitution of South Africa. And in accordance to the Constitution, the Auditor General Act was passed in 1994, and the Public Audit Act of 2005. It ensured that the Auditor Generals, they had independence in matters of working. So the Auditor General of South Africa is the supreme auditing authority of South Africa, and there is also one Deputy Auditor General as well. So the Office of the Auditor General of South Africa is headed by an executive officer, and below them there are 2 corporate executives as well, one for the regulatory audits and the other for non-regulatory audits. Now we are done with the 4th block and the 10th unit, which was pertaining to budgeting and audit system as well as planning process in the BRICS countries. Now we shall be discussing the local governance in the BRICS countries. So we all know that in a federal setup, local government is placed at the bottom of the hierarchy of the government. So that is union, state, and local level. The union is at the top, the state is at the intermediary, and the local at the bottom. But nonetheless, its significance in democratic settings cannot be underplayed. So the local governments, they are part of any form of the government, and they are the mainstay of governance at the local level. And rightly, local governments have been called grassroots of democracy, as these bodies, they are the most appropriate to address the local issues. And high quality authority in local government, it can be guaranteed through vigorous and successful involvement of the people. So the local people, they are authorized through elections to bring suitable changes and improvements in the local administration, be it an urban local body or rural local body. The onus lies with local citizens to make the local governance responsive and responsible. So if we talk about local governance in Brazil, let us discuss the objectives of local governance in Brazil. So the following are the major objectives of local governance in Brazil. The first objective is the local governance. It analyzes the arrangement of local finance in Brazil. The local governance in Brazil, it focuses on federal, state, local relations regarding distribution of financial resources. Also, the local governance in Brazil examines new policies which have been executed by the federal government in the 1990s. And the local governance, it creates inducement for basic social services as well. So the local government designed and framed in a manner to empower the community life of the common citizens in the decision making process. Now let us discuss the structure of the local governance in Brazil. So there are two diverse structures that are followed by participatory strategy in local governance in Brazil. So these two diverse structures are community councils and participatory budgeting. So now let us discuss the establishment of the community councils. So the formation of community councils is obligatory by the federal legislation in Brazil. The position of community councillors is to promote resource share and the use of capital. So there are following two diverse brands of community councils are in Brazil. The first is policy of neighborhood, and the second is councils for plural groups. So now let us discuss the local governance in Russia, and we shall be starting with the structure of local government in Russia. So the two tiers of local self-government in Russia can be categorized as mentioned below. The first is the upper tier, which consists of cities and districts. The second is the lower tier, which consists of towns, settlements, and villages. So now let us discuss the basic functions of local government. The upper tier of local government, it comprises of cities and districts, and the lower tier of local administration, it comprises of towns, settlements, and villages. So in many regions of locality, the upper tier was confined to the local community as a necessary unit of local self-government, and it puts focus on democratic decentralization, where central authority along with the state functions can be considered and relocated. On the other hand, the lower tier was also granted the position of local self-government. The uniqueness of the managing administration in Russian local government can be described like this. So there is a hierarchical authority of line managerial position in Russia. The professional manager in the area of service deliverance is also there. In Russia, there is authentic budgetary power to keep hold of at the center of the influence. And there is some level of domination as well as steadiness of potential from staff and public. And finally, the final feature is pertaining to the community funding and public stipulation with marginal charging element. Now let us discuss local governance in India. So the first 5-year plan, it referred to this idea of village development to achieve overall development, and in October 1952, community development program was announced by the government of India. The second 5-year plan, it focused to envelop the landscape with the National Extension Service at the block level under the leadership of the Block Development Officer. Now let us discuss the structure and functions of local governance in India. So the structure of local governance can be represented in the following ways. The first is the Gram Sabha and the Gram Panchayat. So the Gram Sabha is the fundamental unit of the 3-tier arrangement, and it is the keystone of the people's empowerment. So it is a form of direct democracy that exists at the very grassroots level. So the Gram Sabha is to perform as a unit of self-government, and it included all the adults dwelling within the territory. So the Gram Panchayat is the executive body of the Gram Sabha. Now let us discuss the urban local bodies. So another set of local bodies that cater to the needs of urban areas, and such bodies are popularly known as urban local bodies. So as the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act, it deals with rural local bodies. The 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, it deals with the urban setup of local administration. So prior to 74th Amendment, Different types of urban local bodies they existed in India, such as municipal corporation, municipality, notified area committee, town area committee. There were special purpose agency, township, port trust, cantonment board. However, after the amendment, the number of urban bodies has been reduced to three only, such as municipal corporation, municipal council, and nagar panchayat. There is also provision for the reservation of seats. So Article 243T, it makes provisions for the reservation of seats, and seats are reserved for the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in every municipality, and the number of seats so reserved shall bear as nearly as may be the same proportion to the total number of seats to be filled by direct election in that municipality as the population of the SCs in the municipal area or of the STs in the municipal area bears to the total population of that area. And such seats, they may be allocated by rotation to different constituencies in a municipality. So these municipalities, they also have power to impose taxes by and funds of. So Article 243X of the Constitution, it states the power to impose taxes by and raise funds of the municipalities. The legislature of a state, it may by law authorize a municipality to levy, collect, and appropriate such taxes, duties, tolls, and fees in accordance with such procedure and subject to such limits assigned to a municipality. Such taxes, duties, tolls, and fees levied and collected by the state government for such purposes and subject to such conditions and limits, and provide for making such grants in aid to the municipalities from the consolidated fund of the state. Now let us discuss local governance in China. So the first aspect of local governance in China is pertaining to the growth of village committees. So the idea and observance of village autonomy, they have past history in Maoist and pre-communist China. So during the complete period of Mao's rule in China, the stage of governance below the county had to take concern of them. And on the lines of local governance in China, there are different parameters of managing community life. So these parameters, they are based on establishment of township, village governance, the commune system, and the production brigade. So China managerially is separated into following groups. The first is provinces and the second is municipalities. So the position of provinces, it includes a number of components of governance, and these components are characterized as prefectures, counties, provincial cities, townships, and villages. So the elections and functions of the villagers committees. The procedures of villagers committees are voted for 3-year stipulations. So configuration of village governance in China. The following are the configuration of village governance in China. The first is village charters. The second is village pledges. The third is management regulations. The fourth is village assemblies. And finally, there is village representative assemblies as well in China. Let us discuss the function of the village assemblies in China. So, village representative assemblies, they refer to the village committees of the complete village autonomy platform in China. It is necessary to assemble at least once a year. So, the village parliament, it has the following advantages. The first is choice of representation. The second is accountability and transparency. And finally, choice of advocacy. So, we have discussed local governance in Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Now let us discuss local governance in South Africa. So the local government in South Africa has a variety of authority and purpose at its requirement. The ultimate community supremacy is definite in the 1996 Constitution of South Africa in Section B of Schedules 4 and 5. So the interim stage or system of local government, it has been divided into two-tier system of local governance. So there are local councils within every metropolitan area. So the metropolitan local councils, they carry out diverse purpose in dissimilar metropolitan areas, and some have understood a wider variety of service release occupation than others. Generally, metropolitan residents, they have not acknowledged with the innovative metropolitan local council limitations, and large metropolitan local councils have resisted making easy community participation in municipal affairs. So if we talk about the district councils in South Africa, there are substantial disparity in the dimension of the budget and staffing complements of district councils in South Africa. So the Local Government Transition Act in South Africa did not offer for apparent powers for district councils, and the authority of district council and their purpose, they are strong minded by provincial announcement, which vary from area to area. So in the country, the district councils have been divided into two boards: old regional services councils board and the joint service board. So district council areas tariff profits, they composed in urban areas, is thus utilized completely for the urban area only. So the district council areas tariff profits, which are composed in urban areas, they are utilized completely for the urban area only and not for the rural areas. So this can be professed as inequitous to non-urban areas, and it effectively strengthens the development of the chief metropolis. Also, there are transitional local councils in South Africa as well. So these transitional local councils, they have been functional to the majority municipal areas ranging from main town to little rural settlement, with very diverse economic and social authenticity. And this transitional local council, it has moderately concrete administrative and financial aptitude as well. Also in South Africa, there are rural councils as well. So there are three types of local administration in rural areas in South Africa. The first is the transitional representative councils, which are assigned with the representative responsibilities. However, they do not have any executive powers. Then there is the transitional representative councils. They are dependent on district councils for secretarial, scientific, and monetary hold up. And these councils, they are also a part of the structure of local governance in South Africa, and it comprises of urban complement, which is referred to transitional local councils, and the taxing power is also assisted with the transitional local councils in South Africa. So the developmental local government in South Africa has the following four interconnected distinctiveness. The first is social development and growth. The second is pertaining to integration and coordination of development. The third is pertaining to democratizing development. And the fourth is pertaining to leading and learning. So we have discussed the fifth block, which was pertaining to local governance in BRICS. Now, if we move on to the sixth block, is pertaining to emerging issues, and it consists of citizenship, governance, and administration, growing role of civil society, and finally, BRICS administrative reforms in governance. So today we shall be discussing citizenship, governance, and administration in the BRICS countries. So let us begin with the 12th unit of block 6, that is pertaining to citizenship, governance, and administration in the BRICS countries. So we shall be first discussing the citizenship, governance, and administration in Brazil. So if we talk about citizenship in Brazil, the law is governed by Article 12 of the Constitution of Brazil, which directs the authorities to create the rules regarding the ascertaining of Brazilian citizenship, and a person who is born in Brazil attains the citizenship of Brazil without any further condition or turn of further laws. But there happens to be one exception, which says that children who are born in the territory of Brazil are the ones whose parents and siblings belonging to a different nationality can also apply for citizenship of the nation state of Brazil. So this free ship, it especially applies for the children born to Brazilian diplomats in Brazil. Now, if we talk about governance and administration in Brazil, as far as the governance and administration in the nation state of Brazil is concerned, it features both urban and localized instruments of governance, including the structure of local government as well. So, the legal system of Brazil is based upon Roman courts, and Brazil has not accepted the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice. And in accordance with Article 76 of the Federal Constitution of the nation state of Brazil, the entire administrative setup, along with the executive, is run by the Brazilian president, that is Luiz de Inácio Silva, who is further assisted by the state ministers. So, presidential powers in the nation state of Brazil, they include the functioning of the Brazilian president, Mr. Luiz Inácio de Silva, as the supreme commander of the armed forces. So the Brazilian president is also the supreme commander of the armed forces, just like in our country, and one who can take penal action against deviations in behavior and action. So the structure of local government in Brazil is also well developed in the nation state of Brazil. The structure of local government is also well developed in the nation state of Brazil, which is constituted by the union, state, and cities, and the localized governing bodies, much akin to the larger municipal and standard structure in the larger international system. And also, there is this aspect of para-diplomacy as well, which has percolated down to the local governments as well. So the local governments, especially the urban local bodies, the municipal corporations, which are very powerful in the cities like Brasilia, Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, these bodies, they are signing treaties with foreign countries on their own without taking help of the central or provincial governments. So this can be cited as an example of, and they are bringing investments to their urban areas for urban development and urban rejuvenation. So this is a very unique thing that exists in Brazil. Is an example of the phenomena of para-diplomacy, which is also started in our country as well, but it is there at the provincial level. It is not percolated down to the local levels. So the nation of Brazil is endowed with currently 26 states and one federal district of Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil. And mayors and secretaries, they constitute a significant part of the governing and administrative structure in the nation state of Brazil. Now let us discuss the citizenship and governance and administration in Russia. So if we start with the citizenship in Russia, Russia also values the significance of its citizens' rights and their factors of convenience. So there are few conditions which go hand in hand if someone wants to acquire the citizenship of Russia. So the applicant for citizenship of Russia must speak Russian language and must have a legal source of income and must be a genuine and loyal taxpayer also. And the citizenship applicant needs to apply to cancel the condition of the previous citizenship if there is any. And the applicant needs not to be involved in any criminal activity and must have resided in Russia as a permanent resident in the nation state of Russia for at least a period of 5 years. Now let us discuss the governance and administrative apparatus in Russia. So the administrative system in Russia is one of the oldest in the European and Western mold. So the Russian system, it remains the most flawed system in the sense that it is part of the demos of the world now, but the footprints of autocracy still remain embedded in the Russian administrative setup, with the great centralization of power in the state capital of Moscow. So the constitution of Russia, it calls for strong powers for the national president of Russia, that is Vladimir Putin. So the Russian presidency is so strong and powerful in its reach and influence that it is regarded as being similar to the Fourth Republic of France in the post 1954 era under the rule of Charles de Gaulle. So, such is the legal framework which determines the nature and extent of powers of the Russian president in the contemporary context. Now, let us discuss citizenship, governance, and administration in our country, India. So, if we talk about citizenship in India, apart from the recognition angle and perception of the idea of citizenship, the person who is deemed to be a citizen can become a part of the national society and can derive his or her moorings from that national and constitutional status. Still, as the nation proceeds further, we need not limit the nation to the idea of a law book. Instead, the idea of citizenship also determines that how can the person interact with the state and how can that person manage to express oneself within the space of the Indian law and the constitution. So the idea of citizenship is also attached to the American idea of e pluribus unum, which reflects the idea that there is one creation, that there is the creation of one out of many. Thus, the degree of political participation which is allowed in India also reflects the large amount of freedom of expression, liberty, and constitutional largesse which Indian citizens enjoy and are entitled to. So, the right to vote and other fundamental rights are an expression of the extent to which freedom is enshrined in the Indian democratic system. Now, let us discuss the governance and administrative apparatus in India. So, as we all know, that India is a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic with a parliamentary form of government, which is a democracy in the truest sense of the term. So the governing system is marked by the three organs of the order of executive, judiciary, and legislature. So the Indian system is a federal structure which has well pronounced features of a unitary bias. So the constitutional expert K.C. Weir has called the Indian Federation as a federation with a unitary bias. So he has called the Indian Federation as quasi-federal. The constitutional expert, British constitutional expert Kenneth C. Weir, he has called the Indian Federation as a quasi-federal. And another famous scholar, Maurice Jones, has described the Indian Federation as a federation with centralizing tendencies. So the constitutional head of India is the president, and so the president of India is the constitutional head, and the president of India is ably aided and advised by the elected prime minister and his or her council of ministers. So the laws in India, they are promulgated as legislations in the parliament and in the legislature as well, in the provincial legislature as well. And the laws, they are presented first as bills in the legislature, that is the parliament. So there is bicameral parliament in India. There is the bicameralism. There are two houses at the central level. There are two houses. The upper house is the lower Sabha, is the Rajya Sabha, which is a permanent house with 1/3 of members retiring every 2 years. And the lower house is the Lok Sabha, which is elected for a term of 5 years. And the upper house can never be dissolved. However, the Lok Sabha, the lower house, is dissolved after every 5 years. And the members of the lower house, that is Lok Sabha, they are directly elected by the Indian electorate. However, the members of the upper house, that is the Rajya Sabha, they are elected by the provincial assemblies, by the members of the MLAs, the members of the legislative assemblies in the provinces. And in order for a bill to become a law, it has to be passed by both the houses, that is Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, and then the president, it has to get the president's assent as well. Only then a bill can become a law. And in terms of money bills, they can be presented only with the assent of the president and with the assent of the speaker of the Lok Sabha. And the Lok Sabha has more power in regard to money bills than the Rajya Sabha. Because even if the Rajya Sabha rejects a money bill, it is considered passed. So Rajya Sabha has the time of 14 days to deliberate on a money bill, on a particular money bill. However, if the Rajya Sabha rejects it after 14 days, it is still considered passed. And the bills, when they are passed by both the houses, they are sent to the president, and the president can reject a bill, an ordinary bill, only once. However, if an ordinary bill is sent back for the second time, if it is rejected for the first time by the president and it is again passed by both the houses, then the president has to give her assent to the bill. However, there is a very interesting power that the president has been vested with. It is called the pocket veto. So unlike United States, the Indian Constitution, it does not specify any time period within which the president has to give assent to a bill. So a president can delay a bill for as long as she wants, right? So this is called the power of pocket veto of the President of India. So the laws that are promulgated as legislations in the parliament and form the legislature, while the judiciary, that is the courts, upholding the law of the land, and the constitution is kept independent of the rest of the two organs of the government in India. And there is another provision that is contained in Article 121 of the Constitution of India, that the Parliament may not discuss the conduct of judges in the House. So the conduct of judges shall not be discussed in the floor of the Parliament. And similarly, Article 122 of the Constitution of India, it clearly specifies that the judges, they shall not discuss anything related to the floor of the Parliament. So the separation of executive and judiciary, or legislature and judiciary, is clearly given in these two articles. And also there is Article 48, which forms a part of the directive principles of state policy in India. It clearly states that there is separation of executive and judiciary in terms of services. So the idea of participatory democracy is also a part and parcel of the entire context of administration and governance in the Indian nation state, where 73rd and 74th amendments to the Constitution, they have empowered the rural and urban local bodies, which look into the matrix of grassroots governance in India. Now, if we talk about citizenship, governance and administration in China, and if we talk about citizenship in China, China has a well-defined nationality law, and a person can become the citizens of China with the clause of being born in China, or when one of the two parents is a Chinese national, or the citizenship can be attained with the due process of naturalization as well. In reality, the resident of mainland China is a citizen of China, with the Chinese residents in Macau and Hong Kong enjoying the rights of abode in the territory. So, in a way, all residents in the three regions of mainland China, Hong Kong and Macau, too form a part and parcel of the theory and practice of Chinese citizenship. And a different form of citizenship norm applies to children who are born in the regions of Hong Kong and Macau. And in accordance with Chinese nationality law, the children born in the territories controlled by mainland China, they automatically become citizens of the People's Republic of China. Now, if we talk about the governance and administrative apparatus in China, as People's Republic of China is a large country with a big population, since antiquity, China has been divided into several administrative divisions. So constitutionally, China should have 3 tiers of governance and administration, but practically speaking, 5 tiers of administration and governance exist in People's Republic of China. So these tiers of administration in the People's Republic of China, these 5 tiers, they include the provincial tier, the prefecture, the county, the township, and the village. So since the years, two significant divisions have taken place. The first one being the reorganization of the provincial centers in the northeastern parts of China, and the second development has been the establishment of autonomous zones with China, with several local cultures creating identity issues in the regions. For example, the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region and the Tibet Autonomous Region, as well as prefectures, localities, and other parts of China, which calls for diversity in the administrative grain and nature of governance in the Chinese nation state. Now, let us discuss citizenship, governance, and administration in the Republic of South Africa. So, if we talk about citizenship in South Africa, there are certain conditions for citizenship in South Africa. Every child born before 6th October 1995 in South Africa's territory is a citizen of South Africa by birth, by the factor of birth, and also persons who are born in South Africa of adopted parents, with one of the parents being a South African citizen, is also a citizen of South Africa. So children who took birth outside South Africa, but one of their parents were on South African government's service or were associated to an international organization to which the South African government is linked, they are also bona fide citizens of the nation state of South Africa, that is Republic of South Africa. So naturalization and citizenship too are an accepted and legalized practice in South Africa. And another thing that has to be mentioned here, that now there is the principle of equal citizenship in South Africa and non-discrimination. These are the fundamentals of the concept of citizenship in South Africa, because earlier, before 1994, when apartheid system existed under the rule of the National Party, the blacks, that is the Zulu, as well as the Indians, they were heavily discriminated, and they were not allowed to go out of their areas where they resided. They were called Bantustans. So these Bantustans and these Bantu lands that were created, they were designated territories, and the blacks and the Indians, they were instructed to stay within those territories only. They could not. So the freedom of movement was not there. There was no freedom of expression. If people objected against these discriminatory laws, they were brutally massacred. For example, the Sharpsville massacre, which took place in the 1960s. So there was heavy discrimination. There were three classes of citizens that were there: the whites, who were at the top despite being minority; of his skin color or ethnicity; and the principle of non-discrimination is very important. Now, if we talk about governance and administration in South Africa, South Africa has a public service which has evolved over the years, with the changing role being expected by the nation and the governed. So the entire ambit of public administration in the Republic of South Africa, it falls under the Act of Public Services in 1994. And this Public Services Act of 1994, it establishes the public services functions, and it also looks into the organizational structures and the establishment of various government departments in South Africa, along with deciding the labor relations as well, the conditions of service, and other facets of employment for various employees. And this Public Service Act of 1994, it also covers the issues of e-governance and ethics, integrity, impartiality, non-partisanship, objectivity, dedication to public service, empathy, tolerance, and compassion towards the weaker sections, anti-corruption checks and balances in the administrative structure of the Republic of South Africa, which include the conditions that whistleblowers are protected in the country's administrative system. So this has been done to check corruption. So today we have discussed these three units. The first was pertaining The first was pertaining to budget and auditing system in the BRICS nations. The second unit was pertaining to local governance. The second topic that we discussed today was pertaining to local governance in the BRICS nation, and the third topic was pertaining to citizens governance and administration in the BRICS nation. So in the next class, we shall be doing the 13th and 14th unit pertaining to growing role of civil society in the BRICS nations and administrative reforms in governance in the BRICS nation. That is what we shall be doing in the next class. That is the role of civil society and the governance reforms that have taken place in the BRICS countries. So I thank you all for joining today's session, wherein we have discussed the budgetary and auditing system in BRICS nation, the local governance in BRICS nation, as well as finally we have discussed the citizenship provisions in this BRICS nation of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and the governance and administrative apparatus as well in the BRICS nations. That we have discussed, and in the next class we shall be discussing the role played by civil society organizations and governance reforms in the BRICS nation. So thank you so much. Namaste.